Today, we are diving into one of the most bizarre, stickiest, and deadliest industrial disasters in American history. You heard me right. We're talking about the Great Molasses Flood.
So, right off the bat, you're probably thinking what I was thinking. This sounds like something out of a cartoon, right? A flood of molasses? Strong enough to move entire buildings? Well, the answer is a terrifying and very, very real yes. And to understand how, you first need to grasp the sheer scale of what we're talking about. The story really starts with this number: 2.3 million gallons of crude molasses. We're talking about 13,000 tons of the stuff, all crammed into one single massive steel tank.
And when that tank finally gave way, it didn't just leak or ooze out, no. It unleashed a violent wave of thick, syrupy death that tore through the streets at a staggering 35 miles per hour. This was less of a spill and more of a tidal wave, a battering ram made of sugar.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The place is Boston's crowded North End. The date is January 15, 1919. It started as a beautiful, unseasonably warm day, but it would end in a way that no one could have possibly imagined.
So, how in the world did this happen? Let's walk through it moment by moment and see how this disaster unfolded. It's just after lunch, around 12:40 p.m. People in the neighborhood hear this deep, low rumble. Most of them just shrug it off. Probably just the elevated train that ran right next to the tank. But then came this awful sound of tearing metal. And witnesses said rivets started shooting out of that 50-foot-tall tank like bullets from a machine gun. And in an instant, the whole thing just failed. What followed was a wave of molasses. Some reports say it was 15 feet high, that just obliterated everything in its path. I mean, it was so powerful it bent the huge steel girders of the elevated railway. It turned wooden homes into splinters. It actually lifted the Engine 31 firehouse clean off its foundation and just moved it. By the time that sticky tide finally stopped, 21 people were dead and 150 more were injured. The eyewitness accounts, they really bring home the surreal horror of it all. This is from a survivor, Martin Clafferty. He was asleep in his bedroom on the 3rd floor. The wave demolished his house, and the next thing he knew, he woke up choking, completely underwater in molasses. He only survived by grabbing onto his bed frame as it floated by. His mother and brother weren't so lucky. This wasn't just a disaster. It was a living nightmare. So in the aftermath, as Bostonians are literally digging through the wreckage, the big question is, what caused this? And the company that owned the tank, United States Industrial Alcohol, was actually pretty quick with an answer.
The company's official story? They claimed the tank was destroyed by a bomb planted by anarchists. Now, that was a pretty convenient story given the political climate at the time. The problem was, the evidence pointed somewhere else entirely. Everyone in the North End knew that tank was a mess. It leaked so badly that local kids would literally scoop up the dripping molasses in pails. Workers talked about hearing these ominous groans and creaks coming from it for years. And of course, no evidence of a bomb or any anarchists was ever found.
This whole thing ended up leading to one of the very first class action lawsuits in Massachusetts history. And as the court battle got underway, investigators started to look past the convenient theories and began examining the actual steel and rivets of the failed tank itself. The truth wasn't in a conspiracy. It was buried in the tank's design.
And it turns out this was no bomb. It wasn't some freak accident either. The Great Molasses Flood was the absolutely inevitable result of a whole cascade of failures, all of them driven by pure greed and just shocking negligence. At its heart, this was a textbook case of catastrophic structural failure. Put simply, the tank just lost its ability to hold the immense weight inside of it. And the reasons why? Well, they are pretty damning. So, investigators uncovered what you could call a perfect storm of flaws. The tank was rushed to completion to cash in on wartime demand for industrial alcohol. Modern analysis shows its steel walls were about half as thick as they should have been. The steel also lacked manganese, which made it incredibly brittle, especially in the cold. On top of that, it was never even properly tested for leaks before they filled it up. Instead, when it leaked constantly, you know what the company did? They just painted it brown to hide the stains. And the real kicker? The entire construction project was overseen by the company's treasurer, a guy with zero engineering experience. And this was the final straw. A fresh shipment of warm molasses had just arrived from the Caribbean, and they pumped it into the tank right on top of the older, colder molasses already in there.
At the very same time, the outside air temperature shot up like crazy from a frigid 2 degrees to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. This sudden thermal stress, combined with the pressure from fermentation starting inside, well, it was more than that brittle, too thin steel could possibly handle. The tank didn't just fail, it effectively shattered.
But out of this absolutely bizarre and tragic event, something good actually came of it. A legacy that affects every single one of us today. This flood would completely reshape public safety standards in America.
Believe it or not, this sticky tragedy led directly to a revolution in public safety. The court found the company was 100% at fault, a landmark decision that held a corporation totally responsible for its fatal negligence.
And this is the flood's most important legacy. See, before this disaster, there were no laws stopping a treasurer from overseeing a massive engineering project. But afterward, states began passing laws requiring that any plans be signed and sealed by a certified professional engineer. Mandatory building inspections became standard practice. The deaths of those 21 people in Boston directly led to the safety standards that keep all of us safer today.
The Great Molasses Flood is this powerful, if a little weird, reminder that when we ignore repeated warnings, the leaks, the creaks, the groans from failing infrastructure, the consequences can be catastrophic. And it really forces us to ask, what small warnings are we choosing to just paint over and ignore today?